we get started with today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and it is not to substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. You should always speak with your physician or other healthcare professionals before doing any fasting, changing your diet in any way, taking or adjusting any medications or supplements, or adopting any treatment plan for a health problem. The use of any other products or services purchased by you as a result of this podcast does not create a healthcare provider-patient relationship between you and any of the experts affiliated with this podcast. Any information and statements regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. All right, and now we'll get started with today's episode. Hi, everyone. It's Megan Ramos here with another bite-sized episode of the Fasting Method podcast. Today, I want to discuss the concept of eating windows. When you migrate from a way of life where you're snacking and grazing all of the time, you do want to narrow down the number of hours a day you're eating. So I'm someone who became unhealthy and overweight from being a chronic snacker and grazer. I mean, food is just so readily available. So much of it's refined and processed. Our brains know that we get these great dopamine responses from having it. And even the places that we go the most that we expect to have focus on our health, places like doctors' offices, hospitals, pharmacies, that's where we find some of the most unhealthy, ultra-processed food. And in my life, working in the medical field, these are the places where I largely spent my work days and just had so much exposure to this quick and easy snacking and grazing food that made me so sick. So what many people do in their journey is they go from being in a position like I was, where we've been taught and almost like bred to be snacking and grazing individuals, to doing something like 16 or 18 hours of fasting daily and minimizing the number of hours that we spend eating to 6 or to 8 hours. Now, this is a great first step. And if you're here right now, you should give yourself a big high five. I'm giving you a big high five because this is huge. Like for me to not snack and graze 24/7, to going down to 6 hours of snacking or grazing, this is a huge accomplishment. It was like the Mount Everest of accomplishments. And I'm so happy that I celebrated myself and gave myself credit for this because it is a monumental change. And it's one that has profound impacts on your metabolic health and your weight and all these great things, we're trying to do with fasting. So really, I commend everyone who is here. And if you're working to get there, I feel for you. It's tough. Know if I can do it, you can do it. Hang in there. This is a great first step to minimize the number of hours a day that you're eating and come up with some form of constructive eating window. But once we have mastered this, and once we feel we're hormonally in control of our diet, it is time for us to kick things up a notch. So we need to celebrate how far we've come. How cool is that? And now we need to take things up a level in order for us to really sort of optimize our health and expedite the results we're looking to achieve with fasting. So what do I mean by that? Well, step one is going from snacking and grazing to an eating window. But step two, once you get there, should be going from an eating window to just standard meals. So going back to how our grandparents and great-grandparents grew up, where they just ate meals, 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day. They just had meals. There was no such thing as an eating window. They sat down at the table, free from distraction, often with some form of their community, whether it's family or coworkers, and they just had the meal. Food was consumed, satiation was achieved, and then they had another few hours before their next meal. And at the fasting method, we teach our community and our coaching clients that these mini fasts we get in between our meals are really significant. Now, don't sprint, before you learn how to walk. It's important we start where we are. But once we get to a place where, it's just enjoyable to eat and graze for those 6 hours, we need to get back to the meals. So how our grandparents and great-grandparents grew up, or how I jokingly love to call it the Leave It to Beaver days with our community. Throughout human history, we always share with non-fasters or people who are new to fasting that it wasn't our default to be in a fed state like it is today. It was our default to be in a fasted state, and we'd have to hunt and gather for food. And there'd be certain times of the year where food just would not be readily available. So we were forced into fasting at certain times, and even for extended periods of time during certain seasons of the year. But snacking and grazing, like having eating windows of 6 to 8 hours, also hasn't been part of human history. It's only been a more recent thing since the 1980s with the development of processed and refined foods, ultra processed and refined foods, making it possible to graze and snack. And this is where we get into those habits. So it's great if you can condense your grazing and snacking to 6 hours and have your meals in there. But we do really want to get to a point where we're just having meals. So you're sitting down, you're having your meal, a dedicated meal timing. When we dedicate times to meals too, we experience a greater degree of satiation and we absorb more nutrients than if we're eating at our desk or we're eating in front of the TV and we're distracted. So we want to get to this place of having meals. So if you're someone who has gotten to this really great place with some solid eating windows, but you're starting to feel like your results are becoming stagnant, and you are having a pretty easy time with how things are going right now, you might think the answer is to go from 24s to 42s or 42s to 72s. That's not always the case. Getting rid of that even 6 to 8 hour snacking or grazing that happens and getting into meals often is what really helps get the fat loss going again. It's not always doing a 72 or 48 or more fasting on a regular basis. It's about tidying things up and graduating from eating windows to meals. So wherever you are in your journey right now, show yourself some love and some appreciation for how far you've come and the big changes that you're making. And if you feel like you're getting stuck, you're at a plateau, and you really want to take advantage of the time this fall before the holidays come, really try to eliminate eating windows and get back to just those Leave It to Beaver meals. And I really encourage you, go online, find one of these old shows, watch them, and you'll see how snacking and grazing, even for short periods of time throughout the day, like 6 hours, was not common, and people really had to save their appetite for their meals. So that is the next step. That is how we turn up the dial, we challenge ourselves, and we start to see the fat loss melting away. So I challenge you, if you're there, we want to try to get to meals. If you're not there yet, bookmark this podcast, come back to it when it's time. You will get there, hang in there, but make sure to celebrate where you are right now, everyone. All right, everyone, until next time, happy fasting.